Then the changed one that Dr. Ryan and I are supporting that just steadies up the consultation, and then Councillor McPherson's before which it's an additional. Yeah.
All separate motions.
Yeah, I just said I'll take them all in part so that we, you know, in that order, if that's okay. And there will be a chance to speak to those so that everybody understands the why. So we're going to launch right now into the staff presentation, and in doing so they may be able to cover off some of the issues. Then we'll go to questions. By the end of the questions we should be all comfortable to go through the motions in the order that I am proposing to. I will just make one comment that in order for this to go forward and for the public to have their right to have their say, we can't extensively unravel this today, because then it won't be anything like what it is now, and it would set us back in terms of time. We need to have, you know, apart from things that are really, really important, we shouldn't be seeking further changes to this. Okay, so yes, staff, thank you.
So before I start as well, I've just got 2 more copies of the complete version available if anyone needs one. So Martin, you've got your A3 one, I think. That's the up-to-date version. Yeah, this is just a smaller version.
And
is anyone else needing?
Councillor O'Leary, you got one?
If you haven't got, so has everyone got the A3 version?
Yeah.
And anyone who doesn't have an A3 version?
So this is it.
This is it. No, that's it. Yeah.
My iPad's only A4.
Yes, a little.
Sorry. No, if that's the one you're working from, then I'll give you this one. This is the more up-to-date version.
This has changed since we got 3 working days before.
The addendum was sent out yesterday, and so you can work from that and the addendum if you want to, but if you want the document in full, all up to date, then I recommend you use that one.
Okay, everyone happy? So we'll begin the staff presentation. Talk us through what we've got here, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so I've said good afternoon, and that we're here to approve the West Town Belt Master Plan to go out for consultation. I'll just reiterate what I alluded to before. I just wanted to draw your attention to 3 things. Firstly, the addendum that was sent out yesterday. I think we're all up to speed with the most recent copy, and I'll just highlight that the changes were expanding on the character area outcomes and projects, so just explaining what those actually were. And then my second point is the nature of the consultation. Consultation will be open for 3 weeks and will include a range of methods similar to those that were used in the phase 1 engagement. So that comprises open days, survey, hard copies available at community facilities like the library, as well as stands explaining what's happening, stakeholder workshops and mana whenua workshops as well. So fairly comprehensive. The questions have yet to be finalised, but they will be open-ended questions, and we can always circulate those questions prior to them being finalised as well for your feedback. The purpose of the consultation is to raise awareness in the community about this site, because it is unfamiliar with a lot of people. They don't see it as one whole space. It's to get community buy-in, and it's also to use that feedback to refine the plan so that it is a more refined document come the final version. The third point I'd just like to make is that I am well aware that it needs a final tidy up before it goes out in terms of grammar and typos. I know Jeff Neems is chomping at the bit to get his hands all over it, so I just want to allay your fears in regards to that. Yes, so those are the 3 points. And overall, the intent of the master plan is to provide strategic direction to assist decision making over the next 30 years. And it is for one of Hamilton's largest and most complex open spaces. We've produced a comprehensive document that approaches the Western Town Belt as a whole and takes a places for people approach to the designs. We've set out a number of strategies and projects that can be delivered in a coordinated and managed way. I am just going to take the rest of it as read, and I think it would be appropriate if we just opened it up for questions now.
Okay, thank you very much. So we will go through the list of questions. Councillor O'Leary, you're first up.
Why have we not, this is formal consultation, because
Sure.
isn't it?
Yes.
Well, not under special consultative process, but we
Yeah.
are consulting. Why have we not got a consultation document and a statement of proposal and/or questions? We normally have that stuff, and we haven't got it.
At this point in time,
yeah.
I was advised that we could develop the consultation material after the master plan was reviewed and supported.
And you've said that, although I think the motion coming from the chair and deputy chair is that they work with the CEO to look at that. But a few of my questions relate to some of the conflicts in the paper, and we're going to need to.
Conflicts
I'm
in the
not gonna
master
be
plan, sorry? Or,
Yeah, well,
okay.
and some of the information that's in here and
Yes.
whether that's going to be pulled out and expressed in a way that gives transparency to people consulting. I
Okay.
won't know that unless I see those questions. So are you
Right.
going to circulate?
That's the plan, yes.
The
We've been
questions.
under quite tight timeframes to deliver this piece of work, and particularly given the Christmas period, which meant that we couldn't get a briefing session prior to this date.
Yeah.
So we are happy to do what we need to do to make sure you're all on board with what is going out to the public, and that we've got the right tone, the right questions, and the right document that's getting presented to the community.
So why have you been under a tight time frame? Is that just the resolution date that was set? Or
Yeah.
is there some particular rush to get this done?
Yeah, it was the resolution date that was set. We've already asked for an extension to be pushed till June. As I've alluded to in my introduction, it is an incredibly complex site. It is pretty much a Swiss Army knife of open spaces. It has everything in it. It has got several politically charged sites within it as well. And as soon as in investigating what these options and the challenges and constraints were, it highlighted that it's going to take a little bit longer than we anticipated to work through those matters with the various stakeholders and project partners. So that has really just put a lot of pressure on timeframes.
Yeah, and just a question on process. Madam Chair, you just said you're not expecting any significant changes or anything, but as we've just heard, we didn't have a full briefing on this. This is the first time, other than the drop-in sessions, that we've seen it as a group, so I'm uncomfortable with that.
Okay.
We had a diversity training session yesterday that talked about precedence bias, and that's the space I'm feeling we're in right now. But I'm going to ask some questions. Just on page, and this is going to be sort of the theme of what I'm relating to in
Sure.
terms of I need to see the questions.
Yeah.
On page, I'm on this document, page 26, you're talking about the influence of arts on the West Town Belt. This is just transparency. There's
Yes.
a paragraph, a statement at the end of the first paragraph that says, Council has passed a resolution stating the Founders Theatre is to be demolished if the new regional theatre in Victoria Street is built. That's actually not correct.
Oh, I see, yep, the last paragraph.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just having a read.
We've got money in the long-term plan, but that's pending a council decision on the future of the Founders.
Yes, I do actually agree with you on that, and in the character area 4, in which the Founders Theatre projects are alluded to, it actually differs. I'm sorry, this was an
Okay.
error. So it
That's
does set
okay.
out that there are some options
Yep.
for considering the theatre. So that's an important note that we'll correct
Yeah,
and get
thanks.
that resolved.
Now on page, so in character 2, on page 85 on the map,
Yes,
this is Norris Ward Park.
yes.
Just, is the, and sorry, I haven't had a chance to look at the big one and the holes went over the keys.
Yeah.
So I did try and cross-reference this with electronic, but the
Yeah.
hashed yellow area in Norris Ward Park there,
Hmm.
beside the existing buildings, is that more, are you indicating more car parking?
No, not necessarily more. So just to explain that project area C, at the moment, and as indicated by the dashed lines showing the existing built footprints,
Yeah.
that building presents a number of issues and has a limited lifespan as a community facility because it was never built to be a community facility. It was built to be a council depot. And is not fit for purpose and doesn't really meet the needs of its stake leaseholders inside. And so as a 30-year plan, we're suggesting that that activity is important to have on Norris Ward Park, and ideally a purpose-built community facility would be built on Norris Ward Park in the future and have parking attached to that would be designed in a way that's sympathetic to its open space context.
Okay, because there's quite a few hashed yellow
Yes.
lines that it looks to me like, on the face of it, more parking, more parking, more parking, more parking. But you're saying that's not necessary. It does say that in the key.
Yes,
parking.
absolutely.
But-
So I think perhaps the key might need to be a little bit clearer. It does say proposed overspill shared parking areas for the yellow. We've actually tried to rationalise the parking across the West Town Belt, being cognisant of the fact that it does parking currently occupies 10% of the whole site. And that in speaking to the community leaseholders, there were constant comments that they needed, that parking wasn't always, you've got this issue of like parking being used temporarily. So a lot of parking spaces serve the peak event times, but then the rest of the time, as it's off-peak, the parking spaces don't actually, they only, service a few cars. So it's trying to address that issue of are parking areas designed in their current formation appropriate for open space, or can we design them better so that during off-peak hours they can be used for other things like events or that kind of thing?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Just a couple more questions. I'm not going to go into the detail of all of this. Page 30, you've got a graph down the bottom under land allocation. I found that really interesting, so thank you for doing that. It says that 2/3 are an exclusive access.
Yes.
What portion of that is private if we take out the 2 stadia that is in our control?
What portion of that 39%? You would probably, I don't have those facts on me right now, but just looking at it, the stadiums plus Hamilton Girls High School would occupy about a third of, maybe half of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so about 50% of that, about half of that
yeah,
majority is in exclusive
Yeah.
use that doesn't have public access, that's out of our control. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just under page 58, under the, opportunities, you talked about leveraging private projects. Can you just explain to me what you mean by that? So on the, on page 58, on the right-hand column, about halfway down, it says leverage public realm outcomes from existing projects. Can you
Yeah.
tell me what you mean by that?
let me just reread it.
You've listed the Cote Pacifica, Hamilton Girls High School, etc.
Yeah, so Cote Pacifica, for example, with what they're currently, what we're aware of what they're proposing, presents an opportunity to open Hinimoa Park up and get that north-south connection happening for that park space. So it's essentially saying, let's work with projects that are already underway or committed to, and use them to facilitate better open space outcomes.
Okay.
So whether that's park connections or improved quality.
And when you did this work on the constraints work that you did and
Yeah.
you presented in this report, did some of that not sit in opposition to the proposal from Cote Pacifica?
Sorry, could you just
So
rephrase
you've
your
talked
question?
about, and you've talked about quite a few places in the report about some of the constraints being over the years, previous councils have made decisions to put buildings on here
Yeah.
and buildings, and eventually it's closed up the area.
Yeah.
Is, in your view, in doing this, because one of the reasons the Cote decision was sort of put where it was to see the outcome of this.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, or what I'm asking for your opinion on is, doesn't that now, that proposal and future proposals like that sit in conflict with the overall outcome of what you're trying to achieve with this plan?
No, quite the opposite. They actually present really important opportunities to correct things.
How?
Because by changing the lease area of Cote Pacifica, they're not going to be needing croquet courts or the fencing that goes around those croquet courts. So their design will mean that those croquet courts will be removed, that fencing will be removed. In doing that, that creates an opportunity to open Hinimoa Park up.
Okay. Just one final question. When you go out with the questions and consultation,
Yes.
I mean, my understanding of that particular proposal was that there's a big whale, and that's a big piece of infrastructure.
Yes.
How will you actually show that rather than a line on a map? How will you actually show the impact of that for the public so they can consult,
Yeah.
you know, give your feedback?
Yeah, so I think there's a few issues or a few points to, sorry, I'm choking myself with my tag, a few points to raise there. Firstly, this is a 30-year framework, so it's not about the detailed design of each specific project site. It's what it really is setting out is the outcomes that we need to achieve with each project. So we wouldn't, because of the timing in which the Cote Pacifica proposal is at, in which they're still preparing their draft, we can't actually incorporate any detail into the plan yet, but what we can step out is the outcomes that we would want to see from that proposal. Secondly, the consultation on the Cote Pacifica proposal has its own, the proposal will be going through a number of consultation processes itself, and we are working very closely with them to ensure that their design complements the open space context and we don't repeat any mistakes.
I've just lost my final question. Final question. Did you look at any other options other than what you've provided in here in terms of the holistic approach? So this is, you know, separated into areas. This is what we're dealing with what's there now and how we can improve that and make that better. Were there any other options that you thought of?
We've put forward a few transformational projects, so that Beetham Park, it's called the Whatanoa character area, so that's a transformational option that could see the West Town Belt change. We have also put forward an option around rejigging Ross Trevor Street and Norton Road roundabout and making that work better for open space outcomes. And essentially the rest of it has to be around working with what we've got and enhancing it, because essentially what we do have on the West Town Belt is not a bad thing. It's all of the community groups that are there are not inconsistent with what we should be expecting on open space. Where the issue lies is with the quality of open space that's being left as a result of ad hoc decision making and leaving residual public open spaces. So what we've really been trying to focus on is quality. Occasionally we've looked at the quantity of open space, but the focus has been quality. So working with what we've got and making it a lot better.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Leary. Next up is Councillor McPherson.
Look, I've got a few specific questions, but I think overall it's organised really well and they're easy to follow, find the stuff. So I think it'll be quite a useful addition to our coffee table books.
No, it's going to be read.
No, it's better than most of them, put it that way. Look, question one relates to the parking areas alongside Mill Street. Now, I recall when I was in discussion with you asking that the issue of them be identified in here, but the only one that's identified is on page 93, which is the current legal parking spot, but the actual parking that's between Seddon and Tristram on the side of Mill Street, which is the bigger area, is not listed, is listed as going. Now, that's a very expensive hard concrete platform that's currently used as parking, which the Access Hamilton task force is openly considering, and that's one of the things I was mentioning to you. So I have a problem with it being demolished like this without, I think it should be listed there as an option, even if, I mean, you can recommend something else to us, but, this is like airbrushing it from history, and when another part of council is actively looking at using it. So I can't see how that's right.
Are you suggesting that there's a blob or a outline which talks about the options?
Well, I don't know how you plan to do this, but I'm look on page 93 at how the western end of that current unofficial car park is shown.
Yeah.
But it's not shown on page 91 at all, and it's physically there now. It's not like we'd have to create one. Sure, it pushes the Farley maybe off down a bit. It changes where some paths might come out, things like that.
Okay, so firstly, the Farley location, all proposed buildings on the master plan are indicative, so they're essentially just squares or blobs, and they could change formation. I do agree with you that it needs to be shown as, like, if it were to go out currently like this, I agree that we need to show a dashed line underneath and actually annotate it to say, former passing red site currently used for informal parking. Happy to do that. If I am thinking as well, it could possibly be shown as its own project. I guess coming back to why we've actually shown it like this is because the Corte Pacifica proposal presents a really good opportunity to resolve this corner and get it designed in a way that works better for everyone. And so if that means that, it means that we could still end up with a little bit of parking there, we could end up with all the parking there. We could end up with nothing there. It's dependent on that proposal.
Yeah, but it doesn't give the public the opportunity to comment on it at all at the moment.
So I'm happy to pull that out and make it an explicit note that we are saying that it could get removed. It also doesn't stop us from, in the short term, charging for it or doing what we want to do it for the time being. Yeah. But again, coming back to it being a long-term vision and coming back to it being in an open space zone, do we want to allocate open space zoning to parking that isn't used for the recreational purposes on there? So that's really where we were coming from.
I hate the excess parking all over the place at a personal level, but there are things like opportunities, that you don't chuck the baby out with the bathwater. So, we want a great green space. There is a way where we could have both, if that's what people want.
Direct it to the questions of what you're asking for, Ruds, because we're just getting a little bit close to debate here, and I get where you're coming. So what are you asking the staff?
I'm asking why it's not in there when I asked for it to be shown in there in some way.
So the follow-up question from that is there a way of representing
I'm trying to be constructive about it.
Is there a way of representing
Yes, I agree. Yeah, it can be shown. I'm more than happy to update it. I completely agree with you that it would be far more transparent if it was shown and it wasn't something that was intentionally left off. It was just, as you can see with the sheer volume of work we've produced, it kind of fell by the wayside unintentionally.
Okay. So does that answer your question on that point?
That one? Yeah. Except just maybe with the Farley showing that oval thing there with hard edges, design it with things where that can be moved with fuzzy edges, so it's obvious that that's indicative.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
I mean, and that goes for some other ones. Not for the existing buildings, they're there, I know.
Yeah.
For anything new that might be proposed, it's a bit fuzzy.
Yeah.
So that's one. Look, Norris Ward Park, that issue that Angela raised about the proposed new community buildings, I agree that sorry? Oh, that's, sorry, Gary.
85.
85.
85.
Yep. Just the issue there of whether we're going to have community buildings or not. We've discussed as a council that we've got them there and they're leased.
Yes.
We've never discussed about the long-term thing. That's almost a different question about whether there should be an art precinct or not and community-type buildings, whether that's the best place for them. So yeah, I'm saying you've sort of, I think have you not jumped the gun to make that decision when the underlying decision isn't yet made by council?
So I guess the long and the short answer to that, the short answer could be, do we ask the community whether they want it to be an arts hub in the consultation?
Or an open park as an alternative? Yeah, what are the alternatives?
Because if we do that with Norris Ward Park, we're doing it with the rest of the West Town Belt, because there's other things that are up for question as well.
Perhaps with some you should, but these are clearly anyone, blind Freddie could see they're temporary buildings that would fall down if they didn't have good paint on them.
So is your question, can the indicative nature of these proposals be
Clearer?
Is that what you're saying?
Not in
Because we
every...
haven't discussed it, you're right. So
Yeah.
how would you like, I'm trying to get a steer
Well,
of
I'm trying to say that we at least should identify the first issue that has to be sorted, which is the question you more or less
Yeah.
asked just before,
Okay.
Jen. You know, should
So
we
the question
use
is,
it for
can that
that
be
or for
reflected?
something else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you look at where on the park it might be if people want it. That's...
So turning
Okay.
that into a question with an action point, can the thinking that Dave's bringing to the table about the uncertainty of that, can it be reflected in the notation of this site?
Yes, it can be. Yeah.
Would that solve that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to cut out this option, but
Yeah.
make sure it's not the only thing in people's minds if they're particularly concerned about it. Hey, look, the other thing was just in relation to the Mayor's motion there and the roundabout, Mayor and Councillor Leary's motion, so it must be a good one if they're both moving and seconding. How did any idea of the removal of Frankton roundabout come about? I know when it was mentioned in passing at the little discussion I had, everyone's hackles, which was mainly mine at the time, raised. So how did any possibility of it getting removed come out?
So
Come into here?
the kind of at the very heart of this master plan is that we're looking at the whole entire West Town Belt through the lens of green space, and we're looking at it being a place for people. I think everyone acknowledges that this West Town Belt is severely constrained by the surrounding street network, and sorry? Well, it's constrained by roads, isn't it? Yeah, that's a fact. That's not my opinion. There's roads around all of it. So coming from the angle of taking this is a place for people, we are investigating options at how we can open up that really important kind of heart of the West Town Belt, which is Boys, Founders, the southern part of Hinimoa Park, Casey's Garden, strengthening that as an open space. And through doing that, it was looking at, can we close off some of these roads? Can we change the nature of these roads? Can we keep them as roads but maybe make them more pedestrian friendly or one-way them? There's a number of ways you can do it. And so that's why some of these options were put forward, because while a roundabout is very safe for vehicles, it is not very safe for pedestrians and cyclists. So that's why it was put forward as an option. As you can also see,
by whom?
by us.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Can I just finish as well what I want to say?
Well, no, you're making a whole stack of assumptions along the way. I didn't think
Okay,
it was...
so but can we just have her answer the question? If you're not satisfied when she's finished, then I'm more than happy for you to carry on with your question.
I'd also just like to point out that in the diagrams here, the dark green indicates... Sorry, we're on page 89.
I'm on page 91, but it could be 89, yeah.
Yeah.
The dark green areas indicate the increase in open space or road reserve that you would get by doing a reconfiguration or a tightening up of the roundabout, for example. And so if we come back to the vision and the goals and the principles of what we're trying to achieve in this master plan, these are some options that could actually deliver on that.
Okay.
And they are options.
I'm not sure where, and maybe the general manager can enlighten me, where staff were given permission to come up with something totally new that wasn't from...
Okay, I'm happy to have Dave's question, and his question is valid, but I would like the staff to have a polite opportunity to respond.
Sorry,
Well,
could you just...
I haven't finished my question.
Yeah. Right, keep
Councillor,
going.
the Deputy Mayor has quite rightly asked where the question was, and as you heard, there was one.
Yeah. Okay, so have you stated the question in the way you want?
I mean, it's like putting the cart before the horse, I think, is what's been happening. So on some of these things,
So your question was where it came from and how it got to this?
yeah, and it's staff put it up. It hasn't come from anywhere else.
Okay, so let's Lance.
And where was that in the process?
Okay.
I think that's part of what we do, is giving our professional advice and giving options to be considered by council to approve to go out to consultation or not. So I think as Jen said, that looking at the principles and the high-level outcomes that we're trying to achieve from the master plan, looking at, you know, that 30-plus-year plus vision for the West Town belt, then I think the staff have actually tried to put options forward around the green space interlinking with transportation and vehicular and also non-vehicular movements.
Well, I wasn't aware that they were talking about changing transport, were given permission to talk about changing transport arrangements on a key transport corridor. Putting my other hat on, growth and infrastructure, I wasn't aware that that was
so that's getting into commentary, and you're entitled to have that comment.
No, I'm questioning the general manager on the process being followed here. I think this has been invented by staff, and that's been proposed as the major thing when it hasn't come from the community or from the councillors.
Well, I think that's why it comes to committee, and if you're not comfortable with it, then we take it out before it goes out for consultation.
Well, it would be much better if we had a workshop, then we could have thrashed around some of these things before.
Yeah,
which is why we're getting caught, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
You know, due respect to you, we're getting caught in a halfway discussion and questions in this
Well, I'm
meeting.
not going to take any responsibility for the amount of workshop space, I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah,
But we're doing our very best to navigate this. We know it's a complex situation. I see that I've got lots of questions here, and want to give everybody the time to get some satisfaction to their questions. Now, they may not be satisfactory to them from a response point of view. Then we've got adequate time to go into debate. So let's see if we can at least get a response from staff to your questions and take it from there, if we may. So do you have any more questions?
No, it's just those three issues.
Thank you. And so next question, Councillor Rob Pascoe.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I guess listening to the questions, do you think, and given the complexity of this master plan, do you think we've got far too much detail in the master plan, and I'm thinking here of the community responses that we'll be looking for as a result of putting this out to consultation. Do you think we're focusing perhaps a little too much on some of the detail here when perhaps a master plan is to give I'm hoping this is still a question, is to give us an overall focus on what the master plan is intended, and then subject to detail around various parts of the master plan, which all have their own history, their own story, their own challenges, I suppose. You know, and I'm saying this in the context of how many TBCs are in the report, which suggests to me that
Keep this question coming.
Yeah, that it's half complete and the other half is not complete, and maybe the emphasis is too much on detail.
Yeah.
Okay, so, no, good question. Yeah.
You got the question.
No, I understand that, and so I guess this is the nature of master plans. Like, I think if we were to stay too high level and stay just with general themes, then we wouldn't actually give much more direction than you'd already get with a reserve management plan or the underlying zoning. So it's kind of about taking it that next step further and also seeing the site as a whole. A lot of master plans do, and all master plans do pull out particular actions and projects that you need to do to deliver on that vision. So it's not unusual to have such a vast array of projects. I think it does reflect the complexity of the site. Just in terms of how the community will engage with this document, I am aware that we do need to do a really, really good job at clearly expressing what is proposed so that people don't get confused. And so we will be doing our darndest to make sure that that happens. And just in terms of the TBCs, yes, there are a few little, well, in terms of the TBC regarding the rail line, that is actually a TBC that's meant to stay in because there's some discussion happening around that. In terms of some of the other things that are set out in pink.
That's Bryce Street.
Yeah, that's right. So in terms of the other TBCs that are in pink, all the pink text indicates stuff that we just need to sort out and finalise in terms of the text. But it was, yeah, so what's actually on the plan was informed by some thorough background research and investigation.
So then following on from Councillor O'Leary's questions about the questions.
Sure.
I'm beginning to think that maybe we should have, the governance group should have some involvement in those questions because, again,
Yeah.
they could run into several hundred pages.
Question.
So have you, as a result of the discussion today, got that potentially in mind, that you might come back to us with those questions?
Yes, we can, yeah. And we can also present the consultation material as a whole if you need to see that as well. We are also wanting to do a summarised version as well. Well, obviously we'll make the full document available because the community do need to be fully informed about what they're engaging with. We will also have summary documents available that pulls out the key things that are changing.
Do you think you need more time to get the, given the size of the project? And I think we understand that it is a very complex, it's very complex. Do you need more time than the present timeline that?
Well, it's a tricky one to answer, sorry. We have built in a month between today and going out to public consultation. And then we've also built in a month and a half between public consultation closing and us preparing the final document. I think that is sufficient time, provided it's supported today. If it's not supported today, then it might mean that timeframes will have to be extended.
Okay. And then one very quick question, or one very quick comment on page 26. The mayor was not Rod Jansen, but Ross Jansen.
Sorry, okay.
So
Again,
I did read the
Jeff
document.
Neems is all over it.
So Jeff has probably
Yeah.
picked that one up. Rod.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Hopefully you've got a good response to where you're going with those questions. So, Councillor you finished? Yeah, Councillor Bunting?
Just like to pay respect to Mayor Adrian Queen over there. Right, now, okay. Thanks, man. Just wasn't funny, was it? Okay. Sorry, I'll get back on track.
Yep.
With regards to,
Sorry.
Jen, thank you for this, first of all, and
You're welcome.
appreciate you sitting up there and damned if you do, damned if you don't land. With regards to what I'm interested in is the flow of people through the entire Greenbelt.
Yes.
And there's a couple of discrepancies I see here, and I'm trying to work out which one is right.
Okay.
For example, personally, page 93 of this report, the smaller one,
Yeah.
where the path goes through by Kodo Pacifica,
Yeah.
actually looks quite different to what it does in page 35 of the A3. So which one of those is going out to the public? So page 35 of the big one.
So with that, sorry, is that 67 you're talking about? 4.6, the illustrative master plan?
2.8, parking for
2.8.
community, and in the big one, yeah. Page 35.
Oh,
in the
I
big
get
one.
you, yes.
Correct.
Okay, so these, So the first part, called Understanding the West Town Belt, is purely analysis. So it's looking at what we've got right now.
Yep.
It's not a proposal, it's exactly what we have right now in the city. So if you want to look at what we are proposing, that's everything from 4.6 onwards.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so the front half is really dense context analysis because of the complexity of the site and a lot of
Right.
unfamiliarity that the community might have with the site as well.
I get you,
Yeah.
okay. All right, thank you, oh, that clears it up big time.
Cool.
That's cool, answers another couple of questions which I won't bother asking you, but regards Tristram Street, I remember in our discussions you were talking about potentially there being, you know, multimodal transport down there. What's your vision roughly for Tristram Street? You talking about widening it or removing trees, or what are you talking about?
So we'd just continue to work with Transport to ensure that any future works to Tristram Street accommodates pedestrian connectivity along the West Town Belt. As far as I'm aware, the Tristram Street decision on whether it becomes a higher volume vehicle road or not is still underway, and they're still working on the city modelling. And Transport do consider that as a constrained road, so there's a few options still floating around. Either way, they are supportive of facilitating better movement of pedestrians and cyclists through that road network.
Right, so how strong is your thinking about a path down the middle?
So if we jump to in the addendum version, we've
one?
got, sorry, right at the end. Right at the end, under 4.18 projects, transformative projects.
Oh, yeah, I see, yep.
Yeah, so we've got the connect.
108 of the big one, the connecting path you're talking about
That's
there?
right. And so
Right.
that's indicating that, sorry, it's missing a key, but the solid line indicates the main shared path going through the length of the West Town Belt.
Right.
And the dashed lines indicate what those secondary routes would be. So for part of Tristram, we've got dash secondary paths. For the other half, we've got, which is where you have to move around a stadium, we've got it being on the road reserve,
I understand.
within the road reserve, and probably a little bit of being in the open space area
Okay,
as well.
Great, thank you, cool. Just turning to the groups, I think I asked you this in the drop-in session, but I wouldn't mind having another crack at it. We've got, you know, one of my queries with Kodak going where it was is
Yes.
that sort of those sports are all around it.
Yeah.
Would it be a bit neater and tidier to have cultural zones, art zones, sports zones, etc.? Or does it matter if you've got a
Yeah.
cultural centre right in the middle of the sports zone?
They are all quite complementary, and I think it's important to note as well that across the West Town Belt there is, of the 15 primary leaseholders, we've got 4 community-based leases, 6 sports-based and 5 arts-based. So there's a real mix of activities, and they do complement one another. I think coming back to what the character is of Hinimoa Park, it's the positioning of Korte Pacifica is actually really important because it straddles perhaps what is more of a sporting zone to the north with the stadium and more of the open space, informal event space that we'd like to see in the southern part of Hinimoa Park and Boys Park. So it actually is, in my opinion, a very good location for a facility like Korte Pacifica to be located because they do straddle both sporting, event and community uses.
Yep, okay, cool. Process-wise, if the public disagree with you and it comes out loud and clear that they want it somewhere else,
Yeah,
what do we do?
in terms of Korte Pacifica, you
Yeah.
mean?
Or is that locked and loaded
Well, yeah, there's a council resolution that we support that project.
as the lead?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and work with them to work with the master plan, yeah,
Okay.
which they have been doing.
So,
Yeah.
so on that, we did, Ryan and I discussed this in the agenda setting.
Yeah.
And we got the resolution sent to us, and it is exactly right. They have been given the priority for that lease arrangement, provided they remain consistent with the general purposes
Outcomes,
of the
yeah.
green belt.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is that that is the case.
Absolutely.
Okay, no, that's cool, thank you. Regards passing red
Yes.
down there, have you considered, or is there an option
Yeah.
to consider it as a skate park?
Not explicitly. We haven't explicitly located play spaces in terms of an indicative dash on anywhere across the West Town Belt. What we've been saying is that this character area, these are the outcomes we'd like to see in a character area, and this could include things like play spaces for a variety of age groups, including skate parks. And those character areas are character area 4, the Norton and Boys character area, and Hinimoa Park as well, so character area 5.
That's passing red, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's included in that space, yes.
All right, so that'll be in the wording of the,
Yeah.
if it goes out. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think that is the end of my grilling questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Councillor
Bit of both.
Councillor Mallet.
Thank you.
On page 97, you've got the FMG Stadium, the cemetery, Old Boys, Willoughby Park, and the back of the stadium, FMG Stadium, and there's some quite significant changes there. First of all, you're moving Fred Jones Park from east to west to north-south, is that right?
That's right.
Yep. And you're moving the club rooms.
That's right.
Okay, who pays for that?
That's what will be determined following public consultation and if there is any need to fulfil that project. So part of DD is...
So hang on.
DD is part of...
No. There's a hierarchy here, and it's
Yeah.
called elected to represent the people,
Please
and you work
remain
for us.
polite
Yes.
to the staff. Absolutely. I absolutely intend for you to get an answer to your question, but please, they're working very hard, remain
Yeah,
polite.
we're all working hard, yep.
Point of order, General Manager, Deputy Chief Executive, no disrespect to the individual elected member, but I understand around behaviours of our esteemed professional staff, there are some protocols to be observed by all of us.
Is a staff member allowed to talk over anyone?
I think, Gary, you must be fair and allow, if you ask a question and it starts to get answered, please allow her to finish. And then, of course, you have every right to then expand upon that question in the next move.
Okay. So keep going.
So, Jen, please answer the question and then you can have another question, Gary.
So what you're referring to is option 7B, and 7B is part of what we've called the Whatanoa Willoughby Precinct, and that is a transformative plan that's set out in 4.18. In order for that change to happen around Fred Jones Park and the club rooms, it's an entire area that needs to change with it. So changes to that particular project area that you're referring to would only happen if there was buy-in and desire to reconfigure that whole transformative space. I hope that provides you with a little bit more buy-in by the community, buy-in by elected members, buy-in by the council.
So it's more than just the staff of council?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And I just would like to point out as well that it is an option, and it was also an option that was tested with Old Boys Rugby Club workshop, which you were at. So nothing like this. Well, as far as I'm aware, they were supportive of changing some stuff. So if this is wrong, through the public consultation process, we can resolve that with Old Boys Rugby Club.
Okay. Okay, so, and now I know that this wasn't discussed. What's happened to Willoughby Park?
Again, it's part of that transformative project where, because of some of the so there's some issues around Beetham Park at the moment where the training field and the community facilities with fencing around them off Richmond Road and the car park there all constrain the connectivity of the West Town Belt, because things have just been placed there and there's not really been much thought given to how people will move through and use that space as an open space. So in order to resolve some of those inefficiencies and that big problem, we're proposing that that whole space gets reconfigured into a much more efficient
Into a what?
Into a more efficient layout, so that we can get public open space good as well as community leaseholder good.
Okay, what's temporary overspill event space?
That's where we have breakout spaces like fan zones that the stadium currently have.
And what, would that be paved?
Not necessarily. All that detail is to be confirmed. It could be overspill parking area as well.
So currently that is a very well used sports ground.
Yeah.
So what will it be?
So 7B needs to be looked at alongside 8B. The two work together. So by shimmying everything around and pulling the community hub closer to the stadium, it means that
So what's the community hub?
It's essentially what we've got now with the Richmond community hub, group of community leases.
So this is the stuff round the corner?
Yes, that's right.
So, okay, so that's not even on, okay, so, yeah, so what have they got to do with Willoughby Park?
So again, what I'm saying is this area is something that needs to be looked at comprehensively so that we can get the field space that is required by the community and by the stadium, but we can also make sure that community facilities can also be located on the West Town Belt and share things like parking, because there are inefficiencies with parking at the moment, and also accommodate event spaces.
Okay, so at that, the changes to Willoughby Park were not brought up in that discussion with Old Boys?
Because it hadn't been mooted yet. It hadn't been. We needed to speak to Old Boys first to understand what Old Boys wanted to aspire towards and were open to, and based on that we prepared this option. Again, when we go out for public consultation, Old Boys Rugby Club and the Richmond Community Hub people are people we will be having workshops with, and ideally together, so that we can resolve these.
Okay.
And this is also, I'd just like to point out, an option. There is also the 7A and 8A option, which is perhaps the more safer route.
Okay. The Mill Street field on page 97.
Yes.
What is that currently? Is that where Fraser Tech play their rugby at the moment?
No, that's Fraser Tech currently play on Fraser Tech Field, don't they?
Okay, so what is that currently? That's the back of the stadium, isn't it? Okay,
yeah,
so that's
or the front
currently
of the
grass,
front
isn't
of the stadium, yeah.
They
with
play
grass.
ripper rugby there in
Yeah,
winter.
yeah,
and
okay.
then-
So so again, we've got the same pink and then some undecipherable thing called temporary overfill event space.
Yep.
What's that?
As it says, it's area.
Well, so are you going to go out to public consultation with things you can't explain?
No.
So that's what it is now. So there's grass there, and then as you see during the sevens, then when there's an event on with Sean's team, then they use that on a temporary basis. And
So what is it when it's not being used?
Open space.
So it's not going to be fenced off?
No,
Well, it is fenced off now.
Yeah,
it's not fenced off.
Every piece of hashing and line on the whole plan. This is going out to a stage 2, which is public.
With all due
consultation
respect, the devil is in the detail.
Stakeholder. We haven't got time to answer every little question, so you can have one more question. I want to then move through the other councillors for their questions, because we're going to have to make a decision whether we've got enough comfort.
This will go out half-cocked. It'll be a shambles.
We have to have enough.
This will be an utter shambles.
Excuse me, but you're interrupting. I would like to just finish and say we need to have enough confidence within this council to send it to that next stage. If we don't, we're going to have to do something else. So let's get through the questions. I'll give you one more question, Councillor Mallett, and then I'm going to move on to Councillor Gallagher. Oh, sorry, I don't look at my phone during the meetings, but I'll have a look at it. Okay, we'll have a look at that.
Way too big.
Councillor Mallett, have you got another question that's really
Yeah, I have,
burning?
thanks, yeah. So there's the so we've got your so Willoughby Park is currently cut into temporary overspill event space, parking.
Yep. Option B, yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Whose parking's that?
That would support the community facility right next to it, and then it could also be used as overspill parking for
And who are
Old
the
Boys Rugby
tenants?
Club or Stadia, whoever are using it.
Who are the tenants for the combined purpose-built community facility?
It would be the Bridge Club, Phoenix House, possibly the kindergarten, possibly not, and possibly Plunkett as well. So it's about consolidating those buildings and using the land a lot more efficiently. But I think it's really worth noting that we do have the 7A option, which keeps Willoughby Field exactly as it is.
Very well.
Okay,
It's
so
95.
we've received a procedural motion, which actually, given the way...
No, that's to be moved after questions.
After questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so anyway, I'd like to move on to councillor Gallagher's question, please.
Yes, thank you. I have one or two questions to what I think is a very brilliant draft master plan, and I thank our professionals. General Manager, just in terms of process, can you confirm that part of this process is that we employ people with a range of professional background skills to talk with public and other stakeholders and then come back with their professional suggestions and advice, and that any aspect of this at this point we can change or whatever? Is that the correct process?
Absolutely, and that's the feedback we're getting. I think I just want to make the point that I think, as some elected members have pointed out, if time hadn't been a constraint, then I think going through a briefing probably would have been a, you know, probably a more prudent way of actually working through this, because obviously there's a lot of detail in this master plan, and we've been working to a council resolution and trying to meet that time frame. And I think the procedural motion, when we get to it after the questions, I think that Councillor McPherson's put up, may look at that. That'll be about council giving us leave to extend the period of actually this process. So, you know, you might just want to consider that while the last questions are being asked.
And it wasn't that we didn't try to find update space, that just with other issues that were on the table, it was impossible to find that space as well. So it wasn't intentional to overlook a workshop. It was just the timing, given how busy we've been, and the break over Christmas. So, anyway, let's. Yes, another question, Councillor Gallagher?
Well, yes, I've got. I mean,
Sure.
you indulge Councillor Mallett.
Yep, no, go.
I want
go.
the same indulgement. And I like Councillor Mallett, but sometimes.
I think you talk, Councillor Mallett.
Well, I don't own that. That's one of my less successful teaching outcomes. Look, the interesting Councillor McPherson raised the issue of the V8 Memorial Car Park on page 91, which is currently P and Q, and then it seems to me that adjacent, further down by the rugby club, you've got a compromise car park solution. And I can understand, you know, accessible Hamilton or whatever. So one elected member thinks, you know, there's a role for car parks. For me, I think it's an awful blot on the landscape.
So a question?
Well, the issue is I'm really keen to get rid of them.
So your question?
As soon as possible, but I'm just wanting, in terms of a democratic process, because the majority of councillors and the public may think they're a wonderful addition to our beautiful green space. How do we work through that process? Just so you've put up the, you know, the long-term vision, but I'm wondering how the commentary goes in terms of either staging or an eventual, you know.
Yeah, so we could amend this to show a few options, and it could be either options for a final outcome, or it could be various interventions that we could roll out over time. So successional change, perhaps,
Get some
feedback on that. Absolutely.
Now, the other thing which Seddon Park, this is to do with the, where we go? Yes, I'm probably on page 87. And obviously I'm just, and you've mentioned it in the briefings to me and others, around the railway station.
Yes.
And to be honest, probably until today I hadn't quite clicked as to the vision, but you've got home of cricket, right?
Yeah.
And do I take it, if we look at that, by keeping that fairly broad, the home of cricket, if you had the station near where Circus Park is, you know, with that street closed, and obviously the other cricket stuff may go towards Casey's Garden. Is that the sort of? I'm just trying to work out. You know, you've got a couple of balls in the air potentially.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And how we deal with that.
So I guess that's the power of having everything broken up into different project areas, is that we can either go down the avenue of addressing them one by one, or we can choose to address various project areas together. That's what we've suggested, that as being a transformative project at the end. We've highlighted that, as transformative project 2, the potential Hamilton City train station, because if a station platform was put there, it would have ramifications on the surrounding space.
And then I guess that leads into, and it relates to Korea Pacifica as well as the home of cricket, you know, in terms of, I don't necessarily, not against extending, you know, guessing a procedural motion that might want to expand our consultation time. Obviously, home of cricket, Korea Pacifica, are reliant on funders for some certainty, and I'm wanting to get the right balance between them being able to get on with their next part of their proposals.
Yeah, this hasn't held them back at all. They're
Right.
still progressing with what they need to do.
Yeah. So whatever we do here, basically, they're in
Yes.
both cases of home of cricket
Yep.
and Korea
Yep.
are online.
Yep, absolutely. Both of those have been accounted for.
Now, with regard to, I think, a very innovative, exciting proposal in the long-term to close Rostreva Street, or part of it, it seems to me on page 89 you've got option A, B and C, and has someone who lived before the roundabout was there, it was my neighbourhood, and before they put the roundabout in, and I'm not against the roundabout, lovely as it is, but what I'm trying to tease out here is I'm trying to tease out keeping some vision, because it seems to me the closing of the you know, so you had the joining of Boys Park across to Hennemore Park would become potentially quite a spectacular piece of green space if you took out that Rostreva Street. What's the sort of timeline? Because while it may not be a goer for the next 5 years, you know, I'm just trying to think we keep, I guess to you and the GM, I'm trying to sort of keep some long-term visionary proposals in there rather than just taking a short-term reaction.
I suppose that's actually really clearly set out in the desired outcomes on the facing page. So we've said that the leafy green heart of the character area for Norton and Boys is the leafy green heart of the West Town Belt, where community and families come to enjoy play spaces, events. That's the intention of the space. Changes to the road network, big or small, will hopefully help facilitate that outcome. And that, I think, is how we will then meet the vision.
And in terms of a staging, if we look at that current diagram on page 89, you've very, in my view, skillfully and correctly designed both that part of Norton Road and Rostreva Street in the interim, you know, to have footpaths, you know, like a crossing, pedestrian crossing. But I think you're designing it such that you're reducing the speed in there, so it's becoming a far more pedestrian-friendly, slower speed zone. Have I got that right?
Yes, that's the idea, and they are all options as well, to kind of look at how we overcome the barriers that the roads currently present and stitch the West Town Belt together. It might be that there's absolutely no appetite whatsoever by the public to change the roundabout to a road, and so option C wouldn't be a goer at all. But there are other ways of doing it, like option A, which is a low intervention about changing the, you know, the crossing points on Rostreva Street, or having raised pedestrian crossings, etc.
I think it's either you or the GM on that, you see. So, for example, you take Rostreva Street. It seems to me, in the short-term interim, you've presented some really good traffic management, pedestrian crossings, friendly stuff, and that may be, we may be content with that. But what I'm keen to do is we don't necessarily keep the in 10 or 20 years' time, we don't chuck out for a future council the option of closing that bit of road off in toto. So you know, that may be, you just may keep that, or you may go to the other one. So in terms of a consultation document, Jim, I guess I'm just wanting to make sure, how do we express ourselves that these are still future options? They're not necessarily, you know, cast in concrete, but they're there for a future council to consider.
I think, well, if you wanted to go down that track, you'd have to keep them in there, but obviously there's a motion that's been put up on the board to take those options out. So I think if you want to keep your options open to go to public consultation, to have that ability to reflect that in the plan going forward, then it'll need to be in the consultation document.
But in fairness, obviously, as I read the amendment, I don't necessarily agree with it, that still certainly keeps option A and B alive, but precludes option C, if I read that correctly.
Yeah, that's what you're being told.
I mean, I don't necessarily agree with
Okay.
it. Okay, thank you very much. It's what an excellent piece of work, really good.
Councillor Henry.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Look, a massive amount of work, I can see that, and you've done a fabulous job. And just from listening to all the questions here, I mean, are we rushing this a little bit and pushing it out to people while this should have all gone into a briefing or something, because we've got so many questions, detailed questions, that I just don't, do you think the public can even understand what's going on and make a comment on it yet?
Once I think we've finished the consultation material, I do think we can communicate it successfully. I do believe that. And picking up on the changes that we'd like to see today, I think it will be appropriate. Yep.
Okay. I mean, just from what Lance said before, an extension might be helpful. So
we've got something coming up, but
yeah,
questions.
Yeah, okay.
Questions.
Yeah. Okay. So my question is just, why have we rushed it so much?
Simply down to the various timeframes that have been put set, and because of the absolute, I keep saying, sorry, I need a glass of water actually.
Actually, to be
Sorry.
fair, that was already asked and it was
I know.
answered. It was a statutory time frame from the LTP.
Yeah, it was.
We set that time frame.
Yeah.
But also
Okay.
a very
No, don't worry.
complex site is what I was going to say as well. It is really, really complex with so many
absolutely.
interests, and
Yeah.
it's been quite hard to
Okay, so we'll move on
manage
from
those
that.
to suit the timeframes.
I think we
Okay,
understand
all good.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I don't wanna
Councillor Henry.
push it any-
That's it? Yeah. Councillor, Mayor King.
Page 93, where Dave asked for the car park to be put back in,
Sorry, 93 or 95?
93 in the old plan, and the one that was put out on, so sorry,
So character area 5?
91
page
and
93 on the plan that we were given
89.
3 days ago.
Yep, so, and that, just to clarify, sorry, that's character area 5 for Hinimara Park?
Yeah, where Councillor Dave asked to show the car park that's
Yes.
already there back in again.
Yep.
Could we also consult on part or all of that being used as a skate park?
Yeah,
Part of the car
I know
park
the
that we've
area.
asked to go
Yep.
back in. So if a part or all of that could be considered as a skate park?
I don't disagree with you. I agree that a skate park does need to be provided for in our city centre, and the West Town Belt would be an excellent location for one. My only hesitation with specifying that location there is that we are awaiting the Corte Pacifica design, and it might be that a skate park is perhaps more appropriate in character area 4 around the Norton and Boys section, around Founders Theatre. So I guess that's my hesitation with specifying where a skate park should go on a master plan. I think we've set out the outcomes that we'd like to see, and that Hinimara Park and Norton and Boys are the more family-orientated, informal and recreation areas that can accommodate a skate park. Yeah, sorry.
I mean, skate parks attract both very good people and
Yes.
some undesirable people, and putting it front and centre right up on a busy road is
question though, Mayor
a
Andrew.
way that would be a suggested way to do it. By including it and suggesting it goes in that area, other people may come back with other ideas, but if we don't put it in there, it doesn't get into the consultation document, and we don't even propose that a skate park could be a part of this.
Question.
What I'm asking for is, as you've agreed to put the car park back in again, which
Yes.
wasn't there, also suggesting that this could possibly be a location for all or part of it as a skate park. And this would go through all sorts of areas. It'll go to public consultation, get feedback. It'll go through Mark's street area. It'll go, but it's a way of getting the conversation going.
Yes, sure, I agree. And on that same note, you know, that's what we're hoping to achieve with lots of other areas as well across the West Town Belt. I think it's sounding like this space up the top of Hinimara Park needs to have its own little set of options, and that will include a skate park or other kind of play spaces, and maybe a few other options as well. But I guess my hesitation with that is that it might detract from it going elsewhere that might be better located and being coupled with other activities like other playgrounds and play spaces, because those kind of activities do work really well together. it is kind of on the edge of the West Town Belt, putting it up there, whereas I think actually pulling it back closer to our city centre could be a really good outcome. So that's why I'm just hesitant to kind of
Okay, but
leave it right up the
if it was
top. But I
will-
think we could be more explicit with where one could be located.
So if it's the will of the
And
governance,
include that
it
bit.
could be included.
Yes.
If it's the will of the
In
governance,
those
yeah.
options for that area.
In the,
Yep.
so it could, that, you're asking if it could be included in the will of the governance, it could. So-
I guess I'm concerned about the huge costs that go with moving buildings, which I hadn't realised until today, the amount of buildings that are going to have to be moved, and the proposals, like it's millions and millions of dollars we're talking about of changing roundabouts,
Okay,
changing
so
buildings.
we are getting into
And-
debate here, though.
No, I'm not. I'm heading somewhere.
Yep.
And what I'm suggesting is there's already a concrete slab there. It is suitable, as Dave said, for parking already. We know it's very deep because it was for the V8s. It might even be a metre deep of concrete there.
Yeah. So
the
And
question-
that's the ideal surface for a skate park to be considered without having to spend millions of dollars because it's already got the base there.
With all due respect, this is debate. The question has been
No,
asked,
I'm-
could it be included? And the answer was, yes, it could be included if that's the
So
will
it
of
will be
the
included?
council. With
Yes.
council.
Thank you.
Sorry, Madam Chair, the answer was, we will put it, something like, we will put it, show it in an appropriate place, which wasn't necessarily
No,
there.
my answer was, if it is the will of the governance here, given what we know is coming up in terms of your motion, it can be put in there. So the question was, can it be incorporated as a possibility? Well, the answer is yes, with the will of the governors around here. We're agreed with that, because we know what the procedural motion coming up is likely to be. Now, I haven't asked any questions yet, and I'd just like to ask a few.
So just to be clear, so you have agreed to show that concrete slab as a possible skate park for the consultation?
Yes, and I
Thank you.
think we need
That's
to
all.
show it
That's
as, I think we need to show it as a bunch of options that also includes perhaps other uses that isn't necessarily a skate park.
What's that?
As you know, I very rarely disagree with my mayor, but
Point of order, Madam Chair, there's no such thing as a procedural question.
No, a process question.
well, it's a
That's
question.
process-
I'll
process
remove
question.
procedure. Would you allow a question, Madam Chair?
Yes, I'll allow one question for clarity
Yes.
on this, and then I'm moving on to some questions I have, and then we're going to the procedural motion.
How do you handle, I mean, I look with horror on keeping that piece of Memorial 8 tarmac, and I think what's proposed on 91 is visionary and wonderful.
So your question is?
And I just think, I'm trying to work out, how do you get the feel of majority? And if the majority says, yeah, we want to talk about some other options there, that I'm just a minority of one, that's cool. But I'm just trying to tease that.
That's how you get the feel of.
So I think that'll come up in a minute.
Okay,
We'll
okay.
navigate a more constructive way. So my questions are, I know how much work you've put in this over the months and a very long Christmas, so thank you. I know you've gone the extra mile. In terms of now, it looks like spending a bit more time to have some governance conversation about this will be likely. Are there any negative impacts of doing that? If we just take a half step back and we have another look. Now, I know there were pop-in sessions. There were lots of sessions, and you've had it available to you, apart from a few changes. Councillors have had lots of opportunities to engage with it. I know that, but what we haven't had is a lot of cross-debate around it. So I understand that too. So if we do push it back a little bit to allow councillors to have another go at some of this, what are the potential implications?
Okay, the only implications is that the timeframes for this will be extended and for the final product.
Right. And in that respect, I think I heard Deputy Mayor Gallagher say, does that stop some of the things that are in process, like Cote and anything else? Does it stop them from developing? It doesn't. So
No.
it's just a time issue. Therefore, that's my question answered. I'm happy for you to take the procedural motion.
And just speaking, just to the procedure, I think that if we can have, my motion, which can be is up on the wall there, is that it be put back to a briefing session so that we can have consideration of this.
Okay. So there is actually, sorry, Dave, I know you'd like to discuss it, and you can when it comes back to council, but for a procedural motion, you put it,
You're
remove
totally right, but you were letting me get away with it
Oh,
for
no.
a second.
No, only for a split
Why would I give
second.
up an opportunity like that?
was on to it. So procedural motion, we're going to put all, we'll do it on the board, I think, actually. Let's just be clearer with them.
Can I ask a question?
No, I'm sorry, you can't.
Sorry, what is, oh, there is it.
So procedural motion, you know what the intent is. We've had a long discussion. Go. Okay, there you go. That's pretty definitive. And look, thank you, Council. I would like to thank you all for what were insightful. It shows that you're passionate and engaged about it. So this will come back to us. I don't think that's a bad thing. And thank you very much, staff, for your work. And yeah, we'll move on to the next item, which has a lot in it as well. Thank you. We may have just a 5-minute stretch, just quick enough.
No, because we know when the briefing's...